On a crisp autumn evening in the quiet suburban town of Windermere, the world seemed perfectly ordinary. Rows of neatly trimmed hedges lined the streets, their leaves just beginning to turn fiery shades of red and gold. The air carried the faint aroma of pumpkin spice and the distant sound of children's laughter as they played tag beneath the flickering glow of street lamps. To anyone passing through, Windermere would seem idyllic, a haven of safety and community. But beneath the veneer of tranquility, something dark and unexplainable was about to take hold. For Marissa Clark, it was another evening of routine. She stood at the kitchen sink, washing dishes while keeping an ear out for her 7-year-old son Liam, who was playing in the backyard. The hum of the dishwasher blended seamlessly with the muffled sound of his giggles through the open window. She smiled to herself, thinking of how carefree childhood could be, unaware that her perception of safety was about to shatter. A faint noise drifted into the kitchen, a low, almost imperceptible hum. Marissa paused, her hands submerged in soapy water. The sound wasn't coming from any appliance she recognized. It was an odd frequency, like a note from an instrument she couldn't name. As she leaned closer to the window, the hum grew slightly louder, reverberating through her chest. Then she saw it, a soft, otherworldly glow radiating from the treetops at the edge of the yard. "Liam," she called out, her voice tinged with unease. No response. The laughter had stopped. She dried her hands hastily and stepped onto the porch, her heart pounding. "Liam. Time to come inside." The yard was empty. His toy truck lay abandoned near the sandbox, its red paint gleaming in the eerie light. Marissa's breath caught as the hum grew louder, and in a flash, the glow disappeared. The silence that followed was deafening. Marissa ran into the yard, her eyes scanning every shadow, every corner. Her voice grew frantic as she shouted his name, over and over. Neighbors began to emerge from their homes, drawn by her cries. Within minutes, the small community was abuzz with concern, flashlights piercing the darkness as they searched the surrounding area. But Liam was gone, leaving behind no footprints, no signs of a struggle. Just the faint hum that lingered in the air like a sinister echo. By the time the police arrived, Marissa was inconsolable. She described the strange light and sound, but the officers exchanged skeptical glances. To them, it seemed like a case of a child wandering off, not the supernatural event Marissa insisted it was. Still, they promised to investigate, though their reassurances felt hollow. That night, Marissa sat in Liam's room, clutching one of his stuffed animals as tears streamed down her face. The walls, adorned with colorful drawings and posters of superheroes, felt like a cruel reminder of his absence. As she rocked back and forth, the hum returned, faint and mocking. And for the first time, Marissa felt the icy grip of true fear. The next morning, Windermere was a town on edge. News of Liam's disappearance spread quickly, and parents kept their children close, their conversations hushed and fearful. For Marissa, the hours dragged on like days. She refused to leave the house, afraid she might miss some sign of her son's return. Her phone buzzed constantly with calls and texts from friends and family, offering condolences and futile words of hope. Detective Alan Grayson, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving difficult cases, arrived to take charge of the investigation. He was a tall man with a gruff demeanor, his gray eyes sharp and observant. As he sat across from Marissa in her living room, she recounted the events of the previous night in painstaking detail. "The light," she emphasized, "and the hum. It wasn't natural. You have to believe me." Grayson nodded thoughtfully, though his skepticism was evident. "I'll look into it," he said, jotting down notes. "But sometimes, when we're scared, our minds play tricks on us. It's possible you saw something explainable." Marissa's frustration boiled over. "Explainable? My son is gone. You think I imagined it?" Before he could respond, there was a knock at the door. Marissa opened it to find her neighbor, Ellen, holding a tablet. Her face was pale, her hands trembling. "You need to see this," Ellen said, stepping inside. She placed the tablet on the coffee table and pressed play on a video. The footage was grainy, taken from a home security camera facing Ellen's backyard. In the corner of the screen, a faint light appeared, growing brighter as it hovered near the treetops. Then, just as quickly, it vanished. Ellen paused the video, pointing to the timestamp. "This was last night, around the time Liam disappeared," she whispered. "I didn't hear anything, but my dog was acting strange, barking at nothing." Grayson leaned forward, his expression shifting from doubt to intrigue. "Can you send me a copy of this?" he asked. Ellen nodded, and Marissa felt a glimmer of hope. Finally, there was proof that something unnatural was happening. But as the day wore on, more reports trickled in. Another child, a 10-year-old girl named Sophie, had vanished from a neighboring street. Her parents described hearing the same hum, seeing the same light. Windmere's idyllic facade was crumbling, replaced by a growing sense of dread. That night, Marissa couldn't sleep. She sat at her desk, combing through online forums and news articles, searching for any mention of similar incidents. Hours passed, and her eyes grew heavy, but then she stumbled upon a thread that made her blood run cold. The post, written by an anonymous user, detailed disappearances eerily similar to what was happening in Windmere. The locations varied, but the patterns were the same: children vanishing without a trace, accompanied by strange lights and sounds. The final line of the post sent chills down her spine. "They come for the children. And they've been doing it for generations." Marissa woke to a knock at the door. It was Grayson, holding a file. "We need to talk," he said, stepping inside. He spread out photographs and documents on the dining table, his expression grim. "I've been digging into similar cases," he began. "There's a pattern. Every few decades, towns across the country report clusters of missing children. The descriptions match what you've been saying. Lights, sounds, no evidence left behind. It's almost like—" he hesitated, then sighed. "Like someone or something is taking them." Marissa's heart raced. "Why hasn't this been made public?" Grayson shook his head. "It's buried. The official explanations range from runaways to accidents, but the details don't add up. Someone's covering it up." As they spoke, the hum returned, faint but unmistakable. Marissa froze, her eyes darting to the window. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Grayson nodded, drawing his gun. They stepped outside, the air thick with an electric charge. Above them, the sky pulsed with an unnatural light, and a shape began to materialize, something massive, hovering silently. Marissa's knees buckled as the realization hit. This was no earthly phenomenon. The hum intensified, and for a moment, the world seemed to blur. When Marissa blinked, the light was gone, and so was Grayson. She was alone, staring at the empty street, her mind racing with questions and terror. Determined to find answers, Marissa delved deeper into her research, reaching out to others who had experienced similar tragedies. She discovered a network of parents and investigators, all connected by the shared loss of their children. Through encrypted messages and clandestine meetings, they pieced together a chilling narrative. Humanity was being harvested. The evidence pointed to an alien presence, one that had been operating in the shadows for centuries. They targeted the young, though no one could determine why. Some speculated it was for experimentation, others believed it was a form of sustenance. Whatever the reason, it was clear the phenomenon was escalating. Marissa became the de facto leader of this underground network, her determination fueled by grief and rage. Together, they developed a plan to expose the truth, risking everything to gather irrefutable evidence. But as they closed in, the disappearances intensified. It seemed their enemy was always one step ahead. The climax came on a stormy night, as Marissa and her group infiltrated a remote facility rumored to be a hub for the alien activity. Armed with makeshift weapons and recording equipment, they ventured into the heart of darkness, knowing they might not return. What they found defied comprehension. Rows of strange pods filled the cavernous space, each containing a child in a state of suspended animation. The alien beings were there, their forms grotesque and otherworldly, their technology far beyond human understanding. Marissa's heart ached as she spotted Liam among the pods, his face serene but lifeless. A fierce battle ensued, the group fighting desperately to free the children and capture evidence. But the aliens were relentless, their power overwhelming. One by one, Marissa's allies fell, until she was the last standing. In a final act of defiance, she activated an explosive device, shattering the facility and ensuring the aliens couldn't continue their harvest. As the building collapsed, Marissa's thoughts were with Liam. She had failed to save him, but she had struck a blow against their oppressors. Her sacrifice would not be forgotten. When the authorities arrived, there was nothing left but rubble and questions. The evidence Marissa had gathered made its way to the media, sparking a worldwide reckoning. Humanity would never be the same, but Marissa's courage had ensured they would fight back, no longer blind to the horrors among them.